Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Ashley Gatewood, and I am the Communications and Marketing Director at CFRE International. And today we are going to look at how to become a certified fundraising executive. This presentation is geared towards folks who are working in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. So we will talk about some things that are specific to fundraising professionals working in that region. We are very fortunate today that we are joined by Phillip Rothwell, who is on the CFRE International Board, and he is going to share with you a little bit about his experience of becoming a CFRE and the benefits that it's had for him. We will hear from him a little bit later. Today, we are recording the webinar, and you will be emailed a link to the recording within 24 hours. We also have a question pane on the GoToWebinar toggle. So if you have any questions that come to mind, feel free to pop those in, and I will make sure that we answer them. So with that, let's go ahead and dive right in. So you've heard of the CFRE, obviously, but a lot of times people wonder, well, what exactly is this credential? We're the only globally recognized accredited credential for fundraising professionals. So whether you earn this in Romania, the UK, Sweden, Tunisia, wherever you earn it, it means the exact same thing. So it crosses borders. If you have donors, or let's say you work in a large nonprofit that has different offices around the world, it'll mean the exact same thing. So if you go to the Toronto office, your CFRE that you earned in the EMEA region will completely mean the same thing in Canada. We're not here for North American fundraising or American fundraising. We're here for global fundraising and what is the ethical best practice that applies worldwide. We've been on the scene since 1981, so we're not a fly-by-night credential. We have been here for quite a while, and we are here for ethical best practice fundraising. Everything that the CFRE stands for has to do with globally accepted ethical best practices. And we all want to think that everyone all the time is operating ethically, but unfortunately we know that's not the case, as many nonprofits find themselves in the headlines for the wrong reasons. Myself, about 17 years ago, I worked for an organization in Washington, D.C., and my coworker stole 1.5 to 4 million US dollars, and they never found out the total. And she did have a development type of role. And if once you work someplace for something like that's happened to you, you really become very tuned into it. It's really at the forefront of your mind. And many charities, unfortunately, have had these kinds of encounters. Sorry there, just got to get a drink. So when you're a CFRE, it shows the world that you take your fundraising practice seriously. You're making a commitment to be an ethical fundraising professional that follows best practices. You're not just somebody who learned on the job. You're not somebody who just went to 3 conferences. You're not somebody who was just trained by another person on staff who themselves may not have ever been properly trained, right? The credential is assessing your knowledge across 6 key knowledge domains, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And it is showing everyone that you have met a series of standards. This is why people love the CFRE. People like to hire CFREs, and people get so much satisfaction personally and professionally from becoming a CFRE. It's, we've all heard it 100 times, but you wouldn't take your taxes to an accountant who wasn't qualified. So why would you want to hire somebody on your fundraising team who might be dealing with a £5 million or a €5 million portfolio, who doesn't have any kind of credentialing in that area, right? People also like to earn their CFRE because they say, it made me have so much more confidence in my fundraising. It made me feel like I was doing things right. And the CFRE process, as I was studying or I was going along, I thought, oh my gosh, I have been doing this correctly all along. Or, oh, I need to make some corrections here. This is really pertinent if your job involves, or you hope that in the future it wishes to involve, managing a fundraising team, right? People are going to look up to you. It is your job to ensure that the department or your team are functioning to the best of their ability. And having a credential is one way that you can get that peace of mind. All right, so we're going to dive into the requirements in a couple of minutes here, but I know a lot of people wonder, well, why would I do this? It has a cost to it. It's going to take me some time to do this. I have a full-time job. I'm already pretty busy. Why would this be anything that I would want to do? And I understand that, but I want you to understand that there are a lot of reasons why people pursue their CFRE, and a couple that really apply to our global situation right now. So firstly is to be recession ready. If you're worried about the impact of a recession, possibly either on your organization or your career personally, the CFRE is a great tool to help you. I'm just gonna have another drink real quick. Sorry about that. So what people say is, okay, I'm thinking about looking for a new job. I want to be the most competitive candidate that I can, or I want to go work for a really large multi-country NGO like Red Cross or Amnesty. How do I get my foot in the door? How do I stand out? The CFRE is an amazing way to do that. From a recession ready standpoint, it can be helpful if you think that you might be back on the job search, if you anticipate that there could be cuts made to your team, but also if you think that cuts could be made to your team and you will have to fill in for somebody else. So let's say, for instance, your job is heavily planned giving, but somebody on your team, their position is eliminated, and now with very little notice, you have to step into volunteer management. If you have your CFRE, you already have studied and are aware of the best practices for volunteer management. So it can help you have more seamless transitions. We do a survey every other year of all CFREs, and we ask them what are the main benefits of having the credential. And every single time we run this, one of the top reasons is that people report greater recognition from their colleagues, donors, board, and beyond. When you have these 4 letters after your name, people notice, right? It's in your email signature, it's on your business card, it's on LinkedIn, Twitter, wherever you are. People recognize, even if they don't know what the CFRE is right off the top of their head, right? If they're unfamiliar with it, what we hear a lot of people say is, I gave my business card to a donor, they saw that it said CFRE, and they asked me what it meant. And then I explained to them I have a credential in the fundraising profession. We hear these organic conversations happen quite frequently. So even if you think, Ashley, the CFRE in my neck of the woods isn't as well known, it doesn't mean that people won't recognize it, because it's an opportunity for you to tell them what it is. It also reflects achievement. We all know that you can skate through your jobs. I remember one person saying to me, not everyone who has 20 years of experience has 20 actual years of experience. Some people have 20 years of 1 year of experience, just over and over again, right? So when you have the CFRE credential, it assures that you're not that person, that you have continued to move forward, that you have continued to invest in yourself, and that you've continued to achieve. It can improve your skills and knowledge. This comes mostly from preparing for the exam, and people will frequently tell me at conferences when I'm exhibiting, I was so pleased with the things that I learned through this process. I think it has made me a more confident fundraiser. I just did an interview yesterday with a person who actively recruits CFREs for the fundraising team and encourages their employees to become CFREs, who was telling me that he has actually found that CFREs on his team raise more money. I couldn't tell you that that's the case for every CFRE, but it really can affect your skill and knowledge base. It also demonstrates your commitment to the profession. Unfortunately, we know that many people cycle in and out of fundraising. Not everybody sticks with it. But if you're a CFRE, you show that you have made the commitment to this role and that you are in fundraising for a career, not just a few years. If you're an employer, you benefit tremendously. You have staff that are operating ethically, which who doesn't want that? Donor peace of mind. They know that they have somebody who is smart, on the ball, who has become credentialed, had their knowledge measured, and is going to be a good steward of their funds. When people on your staff are knowledgeable and confident, obviously that's an incredible win. They're more readily happy to speak with donors. They're more able to answer donor questions, and they're not second guessing themselves and saying, oh, well, let me look into that and come back to you. All right, and I'm just going to go through these last 2 points really quickly, but sometimes people in their own country, maybe they don't have their own, I'm going to say, fundraising training. And so to have your knowledge benchmarked against globally accepted best practices shows that even if you're in a smaller country or you're in a country where the fundraising profession is just emerging, as a CFRE, you know that you are not at a disadvantage, right? Even if you're in a smaller area and some of the opportunities from a career standpoint are more limited with the CFRE, you know, okay, I've benchmarked my own knowledge against global standards. All right, so this will be my last slide about what the benefits of the CFRE are. We do a survey, like I mentioned, and these are the results of the most recent survey, which is 92% of CFRE said earning the credential increase on the job confidence. 92 said it contributed to their personal satisfaction, and 93% would recommend it to a colleague. So with that, I am going to introduce to you Phillip Rothwell, who is on the CFRE International Board of Directors. He is the Director of Development at the Warwick Independent Schools Foundation in the UK. And he is going to talk to you a little bit about why he pursued his CFRE. And then after we hear from Phillip, we will dive into the application. So Phillip, welcome.
Hi, thanks, Ashley, and hello, everybody. I did my CFRE in 2015. I'd been a fundraiser for 10 years before that. I started off working at the University of Warwick and then London Business School. And for the last few years, I've been working at an independent school. So I spent my whole time in educational fundraising. And about 10 years in, it's about 2015, I kind of realized it's a fundraising, it's a proper profession. It's got a body of knowledge, and you know, if you do things a certain way, you get good results. And it's not just hit or miss. It's you know, a proper process of engaging prospects and bringing them along, cultivating them, soliciting. Everything comes with proper processes, practicalities, but also there's a lot of theory behind it. There's this huge body of knowledge, and I loved always reading articles online and blog posts, and then books. There's academic books on fundraising. I thought, wow, this is a real important profession. I want to be part of it. How do I advance my career and my interest in this? And CFRE was there. It was an opportunity to affirm my fundraising knowledge, so that people could, well, so I could prove to myself that I reached certain benchmarks in fundraising, and I could apply that knowledge. And actually, I don't know if I can't remember if Ashley mentioned this yet, but you have to recertify every 3 years, so you have to keep yourself current. So that was one of the reasons. I also wanted to commit to sort of the highest standards in fundraising, and the more I found out about the CFRE, the more I realized you know, you hold yourself to a high standard in approaching donors and soliciting funds, and particularly in today's climate, that's more important than ever. And now, of course, you can be ethical and you don't have to have the CFRE, but it's just an extra thing. And for me, it helps me. It's that badge that really shows that I'm committed to this sector and to being the best fundraiser that I can be. And then finally, it's about sort of following in my footsteps of my fundraising mentor. People always say, what's the best way to raise money? It's to ask people. Well, I had a mentor who was helping me, and he said, have you thought about a CFRE? Why don't you pursue it? And at the time, CFRE had these little lapel pins and people used to wear them on their jackets. And I said, what's that? What do those words mean? And he said, oh, it's CFRE. I found out more about it, and I thought, right, I want to be like that. This is a person I admired and had done well in fundraising, and I wanted to sort of follow in his footsteps. And I think there's a lot of people who have the CFRE designation that I sort of really admired, and that's what I really wanted to go for it. And so I was really aspired to achieve the CFRE, and having to recertify every 3 years really keeps me current and keeps me interested in keeping at the forefront of best practice and keeping up with modern new ideas and all sorts of things. So if we go to the next slide, Ashley. So what do I think the benefits of the CFRE? So I've talked about why I pursued it, but what do I think the benefits generally? Well, in the UK, where I've based, and that's my career, I think CFRE really improves the perception of fundraising as a profession. Like I said, well, like Ashley said at the beginning, ethics is more important than ever. In the UK, we've certainly gone through a few years of some sketchy examples of sort of donor relations, and actually, who do you want soliciting funds and managing donor relationships? You want someone that's really holds themselves to a high standard, and I think that the CFRE shows that. We have to show that we are a body of professionals who act in the highest possible sort of ways in order to solicit funds for our organisations and to build trust, which I think is the most important thing of all. So it gives confidence to donors that, like Ashley said, a donor might not know what a CFRE is, but when you explain what you've done to achieve it, then they appreciate that. And I've certainly found that particularly recently with some US donors who are vaguely familiar with the CFRE because it's much more prominent in North America. It has been really good for my relationship with them and colleagues as well. It's good for colleagues to see that you are committed to the CFRE and to the fundraising profession. I would say again, if your employer, whether you're working in a charity or university or a school, your employer, your boss of that organization might not be acutely aware of the CFRE, but when they see that you have it and they realize what you did to achieve it, that distinguishes you as a fundraiser from other people. So I do think it sets you apart when you're looking for new roles. And also, I just think a final benefit is continuous learning. Like I said, you have to recertify every 3 years for the CFRE. I'm currently on the examinations committee for CFRE, and it's such a rigorous process to go through all of the questions and to write new questions, and each question has to be referenced against academic text. It has to be tested with people, and I think CFRE keeps you at the forefront. It keeps you really interested in advancing your profession and your fundraising your fundraising knowledge. So I say, really, as a benefit, how can you afford not to do something like the CFRE? And it's been established since 1981. It's a global certification. It's triple accredited by different organizations. It's just rock solid. It's fantastic accreditation, and I have to say I'm really grateful to have gained it and to continue to recertify every 3 years, and the little certificate sits proudly on my desk. And instead of a lapel badge now, we get a little digital badge which we can use. And I think every time I see someone with a digital badge, a CFRE, I recognize that's somebody else that's been through the same thing as me. And it's a great network as well, not to say the least. So that's my summary, and I think I'm speaking a bit later on, but hand back to Ashley.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Philip. That was really insightful. All right. So now we're gonna talk about how to become a CFRE, the actual steps. So there's 2 steps. The first is to complete an online application, and the second is to pass our exam. That's all there are, just these 2 steps. The application is looking at what you've accomplished in the last 5 years. So effectively right now, we're looking at 2018, January 1 forward. So this means if you have done anything from 2017 and prior, it's not going to qualify. And I'm going to talk about the 3 application sections in just a minute. So that's all going to kind of make a little bit more sense. But we're going back the last 5 years. Your application itself won't expire. So if you begin an application with us and don't log into it for 2 years, we will still have it. You don't have to finish this application all in one go. You can log in and out as much as you like, and we actually recommend that that's what you do, that you work on it little by little. If you haven't yet started your application, it is free to do so, super easy. Just jump on over to our website, cfre.org, and where these arrows come up, that's where you're going to click to begin your application. You only pay if you decide to submit your application. So if you're still on the fence about it, you're just getting more information, you don't have to pay anything to get your application going. The application is divided into 3 main areas, and I'll talk about these one by one. The first is the education section, and you need 80 points. And now you're thinking, thank you, Ashley, what the heck is a point? So let's look at the ways that we can earn points. You earn 1 point per hour that you're in a fundraising session. Let's say you go to the IFC conference and there are 10 hours worth of sessions that you sit in. You're going to earn 10 points, right? You go on a 1-hour webinar about millennial donors, 1 point. 1 point is 1 hour in the session. Crazy easy, right? That's all that it is. If you ever present material that's fundraising related, or you're on a fundraising panel, you'll earn 2 points per hour. If the idea of presenting makes you want to fall through the floor and disappear and terrifies you, don't worry, you don't have to do any presenting if you don't want to. It's just a way that you can bank up points faster. And then we'll award you 3 points the first time you present new material to recognize your time assembling and researching. We can also award points for academic degrees. These are the one item that don't go back 5 years, that they're any year, any major. So if you have, let's say, an English degree from Brunel University in 2002, which is actually where I went to school in 2002, that's going to be worth 10 points, right? So it's any year, any major. It doesn't have to be in the last 5 years. If you have multiple degrees, let's say you have a bachelor's and a master's, we'll give you 10 points for each of those. You can have up to 40 points maximum from your degrees. If you don't have a degree, it's no sweat. You don't have to have one. It's not a requirement. But if you do, we'll give you points. We can also award you points for relevant non-fundraising education. So this would be like a budgeting class, leadership and management, something along those lines. Keep it realistically related to we've had people submit insanes before, like yoga for fundraisers, a chocolate making class. You know, these all sound great, but they're not going to qualify to something that ladders up to your fundraising performance. And then we can also award up to 10 points for service learning. This is our term for volunteering. So if you volunteer, great. If you don't volunteer, that's not a count against you. But if you volunteer, you will earn points for it, up to 10. And we award 1 point per year per org that you volunteer with. Let's say you volunteer at an after-school program September through May. That's completely fine and it would count. Your volunteer activity doesn't have to run 12 full months because a lot of them just don't, right? They're seasonal and we understand that. If you're on a committee or a board, we will award you 2 points per year that you're on, serving in that capacity. On your screen now, you can see a variety of ways that you can earn this education. So these are all things that if they're fundraising related are going to qualify. The one that I want to draw your attention to is number 4, the audio video recordings of conferences. This is a really effective way to earn a lot of points off the cost of one conference registration. Okay, so let's say you register for a conference. You go on the day, there's 4 tracks, you attend whatever you attend, and then you come back later, come home, and 2 weeks later, they say, hey, we have recordings available of all of our sessions. If you watch the sessions that you didn't attend on the day, you can earn points for those too. All right, so we don't have any questions yet in the question pane, but don't forget it's there. Feel free to type in whatever you need to, and we'll get to it. All right, now I'm going to launch a quick poll here, and we're going to ask you, how long have you been professionally fundraising? So go ahead and tell us, and I'm going to close the poll in 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. All right, and it looks like we've got a lot of people new to the profession, which is great to see, and some quite seasoned people along with us too. Excellent, very good. I asked that question here because this is the next section of the application, professional practice. This is just how long you have been working in a paid professional fundraising role. You need 36 points, and 1 point equals 1 month that you've been working. So everyone who has 3 or more years in fundraising, you have already met this requirement if those 3 years were in the last 5. You've already got it. So that's all there is to it. Your job needs to be at least 50% fundraising if you work full time. If you wear the marketing hat half the time and you wear the PR hat, you wear like the marketing hat half the time and you wear the fundraising hat half the time, that's completely fine. It's going to qualify. You don't need to worry. If you work part-time, 20 hours a week, then 100% of your role must be fundraising. All right, 55 points in professional performance. Professional performance just means you raising funds, right? That's simply all that it means. And you're a fundraiser, so you're already doing this. You earn 1 point for every 25,000 US dollars that you've raised. And people often wonder, why is this US dollars? Because you're a global credential. The reason is because we're accredited, and the accrediting body, ANAB, only lets us use one currency. So we're not allowed to have one requirement for the euro, one requirement for the British pound, one for the Brazilian real. You get the picture. So there's a currency converter inside the application that will help you with this. But honestly, if you're in Europe, you actually usually have an advantage because the euro and the pound are stronger than the dollar. If it's an event, you're going to report the gross. And then I want to talk a little bit about how fundraising is a team sport. Effectively, let's say I'm on a fundraising team with, I'm going to look at this here, with Sabina and Sarah and Susanna, and we're all tasked with raising funds through a fundraising run event, right? And it brings in €250,000. There's no way to say, well, Sarah raised this much and Ashley raised this much. You're just going to look at it cumulatively. So if that event, let's say, raised €200,000, each of us on our application would be able to put €200,000. Okay, now let's see, we have had a question come in. Let me see. All right, I will get to that in a second. So what is the cost of all of this? So the initial certification cost is $700. If you are a member of the Association of Fundraising Consultants, Kenyan Association of Fundraising Professionals, or if you belong to any IFA member organization. So I'm going to show that to you in the next slide, what that means. If you're not a member of any of these orgs, the cost is $875 US dollars. So you can see this list of organizations on your screen. If you're a member of any of them, you will enjoy that $700 rate. Now, if you have your fiscal year coming to an end on June 30th, it's a tight turnaround, but you can talk to your boss about adding the $700 US to your either next year's budget, or if you have funds this year that you need to use up, you can do that too. 54% of CFREs tell us that their employer contributed to part or all of the application costs. You're a fundraiser, you know all about asking for financial support, so don't be afraid to have that conversation. That application fee is all inclusive. It includes everything that is on your screen here. It's us reviewing your application, all testing fees, the digital badge that Phillip talked about, and us printing and mailing your certificate. So once you pay that fee, you're not going to be asked to pay anything else. If you submit your application and we find an error, there is no charge to resubmit. So don't be worried about that. If we find an error, we will be sure to let you know. All right, now I'm going to talk about the test windows. So we talked about the application. Now let's talk about the exam. The exam is not offered every day of the week, of the month. It is offered during 4 test windows that you can see here on your screen. Essentially, when you submit your application, you don't have to commit to a date that you want to test, but you do have to commit to a window. Once we approve your application, we'll send you an email with the instructions to book your exam, and then you'll pick your date within that window then. I'm gonna get another drink here. The exam covers 6 knowledge domains. And this is what people love about the exam, because it's so comprehensive that in studying for, people really address any gaps in their fundraising knowledge that they have. So you can see here what these 6 knowledge domain areas are. You're going to notice that securing the gift and relationship building make up about half the exam. So when you're studying, you absolutely want to be sure that you give your full attention to those areas. I'm going to tell you to give your full attention to all of the areas, but especially those. On our website, we have a test content outline, because those 6 knowledge domains are pretty broad, right? And this breaks down the absolute nitty-gritty of the exam. So you know precisely the questions that are the topics of the questions that we're going to be asking you about. On exam day, nothing is going to come out of left field. So the best way to get your studying underway is to print this off our website, grab a highlighter, and highlight all of the areas where you don't feel confident you could answer an exam question. That's going to show you where you need to brush up, so you're not going to waste time studying things you know backwards and forwards. We have a resource reading list on our website. This is a list of books we recommend you use to prepare. There are, I think, 8 or 9 books on the list right now, but you only need to read 1 to 3. You're just going to read whatever addresses your knowledge gaps. Far and away, the most popular book that people use is Achieving Excellence in Fundraising, that book on the end there with the white cover. This book has really become the gold standard in fundraising right now. If you don't own it already, you may also want to ask your employer if they'll purchase it for you. That is another way your employer can support you if they won't pay for your testing fee. The exam is made up of 200 questions, and good news, they're all multiple choice. So the correct answer is staring back at you. There's no essay questions, there's no open-ended questions. Every question has 4 options to answer, right? You're going to select the best one. The exam is you get really hung up on it, but then question 94 jogs your memory. you can just go back to question 7. The score range is 200 to 800, and 500 is a passing score. There's more information about how this is scored on our website. Some people tell me that this is their favorite slide in the presentation. This is a practice question. This question does not appear on the live exam, but this will give you an idea of the format of the questions. And it asks, when a donor wishes to make a planned gift / bequest to the endowment fund, the fundraising officer should first, 1, offer to contact the donor's financial organization and advisor. 2, explore what the donor wishes to accomplish with the gift. 3, identify and share with the donor the organization's future needs. Or 4, introduce the donor to various planned giving options. So I'll give you a minute to think on that. All right, does everybody have their answer in mind? Let's look at what the correct answer was. It's explore what the donor wishes to accomplish. Right? This is best practice because when a donor comes to your organization, you're not trying to steer them towards a fund that maybe is behind in making its goals for the amount raised. You're not trying to say, hey, it needs to be this flashy new program because that's the one my boss is all excited about. You want the donor to come to you with what their philanthropic goals are, and then that is where you take the conversation. We do have some study tools that are available for purchase, and I just want to say, if you don't want to buy these, it's 100% fine. You don't have to buy them. They're not necessary, but I want you to know that they're there. We do have a CFRE practice exam. This is available on our website, and it's either a 30 or a 90-day subscription. It has a bank of 320 questions, some of which are retired questions from the CFRE exam, and you can test yourself as much as you want. I recommend that if you haven't taken an exam for a while and you just want to take off the anxiety of sitting for an exam, as well as if you want to assess your knowledge. It's great if you want to get in the test taking rhythm, right? Our second item is our CFRE Exam Compass Study Guide. This is fabulous if you're one of those folks that really likes an old school workbook style. It has practice questions, test taking tips, and spaced inventory your fundraising knowledge. All right. Somebody has asked here, which book is the gold standard again? So that is the Achieving Excellence in Fundraising 5th edition. And even if you don't go on to take your CFRE exam, I would still recommend that book just to read for your own professional knowledge because it's such an amazing reference that so many people are using now. We also offer the CFRE exam study plan template. This is free. It's a PDF on our website. This is ideal if you have a lot of trouble staying motivated. It has a checkbox. So you do this, then you do this, then you do this. And it can really hold your hand and guide you. When it comes to exam day, we have 2 options for how you can take it. 1 is from your home or office, or 2 is to go into a test center. And we have an arrangement with Pearson VUE Testing, which is a worldwide organization. And at any of their test centers, you can take this exam. So there's not a specific CFRE exam location. The Pearson VUE Test Center will have people taking architectural exams, accountant exams, all kinds of things, but they also offer ours. I highly recommend that you go to the test center because statistically you have a better chance of passing. We get all the data back from the test center and the at home, and we find that people consistently perform better when they're at the test center. To find your nearest test center, just type in this URL here and then type in your postal code, and it will populate a map and a list of your closest test centers. I've done this for London, and you can see that there are 5 test centers there. So Pearson VUE is everywhere. Once you finish your exam, you will get a confirmation email in 1 business day that, hey, congratulations, you completed your exam. And you'll usually have your score within the first few minutes. We have heard of it taking up to 48 hours. Within a week, you get your digital badge. And at the end of those test windows we looked at, that's when you get your certificate mailed. So we don't mail certificates every week. We mail them in one batch at the end of the test window. Phillip also mentioned recertification. This is every 3 years and there is no exam for it. If you're a member of a participating organization, so that was when we looked at on the screen all of those different professional organizations for each country, as well as the Kenyan Association of Fundraising Professionals and the Association of Fundraising Consultants, you will get that 20% off participating organization member rate. It's an online application and you just earn the points again in 3 sections, but it's a smaller amount since we're looking at 3 years. All right, and so now we're going to bring Phillip back and he is going to share his advice with you for getting your CFRE journey underway. Thanks, Phillip.
Yeah, I hope you can hear me. I just had to dial in on my phone
Yes.
instead. So, okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my final advice really is just in the UK and Europe and Middle East, it's slightly different because in North America, there's a lot of CFREs. We're more spread out over here. So we can't easily form study groups that easily. But what we have, there's a tremendously supportive network of people that have done it before. So I spoke to a CFRE and spoke to them about how they approached the exam, about how they got their points. And just call any one of us. I mean, I'm happy for you to make contact with me and find out about my experience. I'm happy to chat. I think that's the first thing. And then secondly, the exam often seems daunting, but it's really not. I mean, you do have to study for it, but I've met a few people that are quite put off by the idea of doing an exam. And that really shouldn't be a barrier to pursuing your CFRE. You can do the exam. You do know, if you've acquired all this knowledge so far and you've got the points, you do know how to pass the exam. It just means you just need to be in the mindset to sit an exam. Like, you know, when a child goes to a school, they've got to get in the right frame of mind in order to do it. So you just need to practice and get your head around that. And the good news is once you've done the exam, as long as you recertify, you never have to do it again. So that's the thing. And then the final thing is really, it's just easy. Just do it now. Just start an application. Start to plug in your points and start to build that and see what you already know, because I think you're probably all there anyway, anyone on this call. It's very easy to track it all through the website, which I think has just been refreshed recently to make it even easier to use. So I just say, get going, because it's really easy to start. Put a bit of time in, obviously, to take it seriously and sit the exam, but speak to people who've done it before and get advice and just chat through, because people want you to succeed. The more CFREs there are in the UK, for me, the better it is for fundraising in general. So please join us is my final piece of advice. Back to Ashley.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Phillip. And to your point about start building your application now, after the webinar, I will email you tomorrow a link to this presentation, but also to begin your application. I encourage you to start it and just poke around and take a look. And you can start entering the education that you've done going back 5 years. So you could also, when you start it, just every time you attend something going forward, put it in there so that you don't leave any points on the table just because you forgot to enter something. We do have a CFRE ambassador program, which is free if you want to speak to a CFRE like Phillip and just say, hey, how did you do this? How did you talk to your boss? Was it really worth it? They'll be able to answer all of your questions. They've successfully passed the exam. So if you want to get connected with a CFRE ambassador, just email me at share@cfre.org and I will contact you with an ambassador. Speaking with your boss, right? It seems kind of daunting to ask your boss to pay for a credential, but it doesn't have to be. Your boss wants to see you succeed. Your boss wants you to be smart and savvy. Ask your boss, hey, would you cover part or all of the application fee? Some people say that they told their boss, look, I'll pay for my $700 fee up front, but when I pass the exam, I want to be reimbursed. So if your employer is nervous at all about what might happen if you don't pass the exam on the first try and they've put the money in, this is a great solution. They may purchase study materials for you. Maybe they'll get you the study guide, Achieving Excellence in Fundraising. Some people, their employer gives them time off to study. You can study and have a full-time job and a life. Most people study 40 to 80 hours, so that's not an issue, but their boss will give them off the day that they're going to sit the exam, the day before for last minute studying. All right, and so next steps, I see we've got some questions coming in the pane, which is great. I'll get onto those in a minute. Next steps, start your application. Track everything in there so that you don't leave points on the table. Keep receipts and event agendas in your personal email, not your work email. These will be great for jogging your memory about what you attended. You don't want them in a work email because suddenly, you're not at your job. And I guarantee you the last thing you're going to think to get sorted on your way out the door somewhere is your CFRE proof. Talk to your boss during budget creation. It's the best time to have that conversation. And you earned 1 point today in the non-fundraising education section, so be sure to log your point from today. All right, so we've got some questions that have come in. One is, what if you're not a frontline fundraiser? How do you show that you've contributed to raising funds? So that's a great question. One thing is through your job description. If your job description shows that you're overseeing a team that is fundraising, you're coaching, you're playing a direct role, even though you're not a frontline fundraiser, that's fine. We totally understand that. And a lot of consultants are in that situation. Is it possible to further consider bursaries or scholarships? So we don't offer any scholarships ourselves at the moment, but some of the professional organizations that we partner with do. So I would recommend checking their websites and talking to them. All right. Okay, well, it looks like we've answered all the questions today. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. Thank you, Phillip Rothwell, for an amazing job talking about your experience as someone in the UK who's earned the credential. Be on the lookout for an email in the next 24 hours with a link to the slides and the recording and to start your application. And we wish you all the best for your CFRE journey. Take care.